Hello, fifth graders. Today we're going to read a folk tale and it's titled John Henry, the Still Driving Man. Folk tales are stories that have been told over and over and passed down from generation to generation. These stories might necessarily have been written down, but it was told to people, family members, friends, and the story just kept on getting handed down to the next generation. So that's the beauty of a folk tale. So one thing about folk tales, in this particular tall tales, is there are a lot of exaggerations in tall tales, and that's called hyperbole. People use exaggerations or hyperboles to make a point. It's a form of figurative language. So instead of just saying, I'm hungry, I would put a hyperbole with that and I would say, I am so hungry I can eat a whole cow by myself. That's an exaggeration. Of course, I can't eat a whole cow, but to prove to you how hungry I am, I exaggerate. And that is again called a hyperbole. So that's the beauty of tall tales. They come up with these great exaggerations to prove a point. So I'm telling you all of this because by the end of this, you're going to write a tall tale about yourself. So you're going to exaggerate on something that you do really, really well. All right, let's see what John Henry did really, really well. And it may appear to be a picture book, but that's okay. You know, that's how tall tales or folk tales usually come in the form of our picture books. So we're learning what one sounds like before we try to write our own. All righty. And the author of this book, or it was retold by Virginia Schomp. Remember, it's an oral tradition. Okay, and it's illustrated by Jess Yeomans. All right. Make sure you can see the pictures. It was the late 1800s. So you all have been studying about that in social studies. So this is something you should be familiar with. Okay, again, it was the late 1800s. Americans were scrambling to crisscross the country with railroad tracks. The railroads would carry goods and people. They would open up coal and timberlands. They would help the country grow. Building the railroads was hard work. The men of the work gangs hauled rock and shoveled dirt. They laid wooden beams and heavy steel rails. They blasted their way through tall mountains. Listen, one man is singing. Soon all the workers join in. The picks and the hammers rise and fall to the rhythm of their work song. The words tell a story of joy and pain, strength and pride and courage. They tell the tale of John Henry. So you should be familiar with these songs while people are working in your study of slavery. You know, when the slaves were in the field picking cotton, they oftentimes sung songs. Sometimes those songs were signals of how to escape or to motivate or to just give everybody a hope. So let's keep going to see what these workers are doing. Make sure you see the picture. John Henry was born on a night as black as the belly of a mountain. That's the first exaggeration. That it was so dark that they compared it to the belly of a mountain. Dark clouds covered the moon. Lightning flashed, thunder pounded. The earth like a hammer. Again, it's another exaggeration. Then that new baby cried. He cried so loud that he scared off the storm clouds. This whole thing is just exaggeration. It's beautiful though. Think about it. A baby crying so loud that it scares the storm away. Crickets sang in the grass. Roosters crowed. In the barnyard, black bears roared and panthers growled in the woods and mountains. It seemed like the whole wide world was trying to say, "Welcome, John Henry." Another exaggeration. Folks knew right away that John Henry was something special. No one had ever seen a newborn baby walking and talking. Now we know that's an exaggeration. And was the child hungry? When he was just 1 hour old, he asked his mama for supper. He ate 4 ham bones, a pot of greens, and a pan full of cornbread. He washed it all down with a bucket of buttermilk. Now we know you can't eat a whole pot of greens as a baby being just born, but it's the beauty of this oral expression of exaggeration. It's beautiful. It paints a beautiful picture. After his meal, the boy climbed up on his daddy's knee. He grabbed hold of a steel nail and his daddy's hammer. "I'm going to be a steel driving man," said John Henry. Now the baby is talking at just a couple of hours old. Interesting. Can you think of any other form of oral storytelling where there's a lot of bragging or exaggerations? Hyperboles. I can think immediately of rap music. Think about it. There's a lot of exaggerations in there, way over the top a lot of times. And I think that's what gets a lot of people really hooked on it, or the fact that they enjoy that particular rapper because they can paint that picture so well using hyperboles. Let's keep going. Before long, John Henry was working on the plantation. He worked with the hoe. He worked with an axe, pick, and shovel. But the only tool that ever felt just right in his hands was the hammer. As a young boy, John Henry hammered nails into boards. When he got older, he hammered fence posts. Whoosh! His big hammer swung through the air. Whack! The post sank into the hard ground like an ear of corn dipped in soft butter. As he worked, he sang in his powerful voice. "Born with a hammer in my hand, going to be a steel driving man." And Miss Holmes knows she can't sing. At last, the Civil War came, and you've studied the Civil War, and put it into slavery. John Henry was a grown man, a free man. It was time to leave home and make his way in the world. John Henry rambled all over the South, working at all kinds of jobs. He picked corn and cotton. He built roads and houses. He loaded cargo onto the steamboats that chugged up and down the Mississippi River. When each job was done, he moved on. He walked down the road singing, "Gotta find me a job with the hammer in my hand, going to be a steel driving man." Don't tell Miss Casada I'm trying to sing, please. After a whole lot of wandering, John Henry found himself in West Virginia. He hiked through mile after mile of tall, proud forests. He climbed up hills and down into hollows. One day, a sweet sound rang out over the next hill. He scrambled to the top and peered down into a valley. He saw hundreds of workmen. He saw a road of shining steel rails. The men were building a new line for the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad. And the beautiful sound that John Henry had heard was the clang, clang, clang of the hammer. John Henry watched the workers closely. Some of them were laying wooden railroad ties on the ground. Others crossed the ties with heavy steel rails. Still, others hammered in spikes that would hold the rails to the rail ties. The hardest job of all was steel driving. The steel drivers had to drill holes into solid rock. A helper called a shaker held the steel drill in place. The steel driver pounded the drill with his heavy hammer after he made a lot of holes. The blasting crew packed them with dynamite. Kaboom! The blast blew the rock to Kingdom Come, clearing the way for more railroad tracks. John Henry went to the captain of the railroad gang. I was born to be a steel driving man, he sang out. Steel driving is hard work, said the captain. You have to hammer fast or you can slow down the rest of the gang. You have to hammer true or you could hurt your shaker. Just give me a chance, said John Henry. Then he lifted his hammer. It flashed through the air like lightning. He brought it down with a crash as loud as thunder. With just one stroke, he drove his drill deep into the rock. And the captain said, "You're hired." Those were some awesome similes where it compared the way his hammer flashed. It looked like lightning. And then the sound of it crashing down was like thunder. So again, it's building that exaggeration of how strong and mighty John Henry was. So John Henry sent to work for the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad. He drove the steel faster and better than any other man. Most steel drivers use a 10-pound hammer. He used 20-pound hammers, one in each hand. Clang, clang. How he made those hammers ring. Hour after hour, he never missed a stroke. The shaker held his drill, the waterman threw water on his blazing hammers so they wouldn't catch fire. John Henry's booming voice rang out and down the line. Ain't no hammer, clang, in these mountains, clang. Rings like mine, boys, clang. Rings like mine, clang. So that singing also helps to keep the time. It keeps the rhythm of him driving those stakes in. Thanks to John Henry, the new railroad line moved right along. The tracks stretched through forests. They cut through the hills and canyons. They came smack up against a monster, Big Bend Mountain. Big Bend was too big to build around. The crew would have to drive their drills right through the middle. They would have to build a tunnel 1.25 miles long. It would be the longest tunnel ever built. 1,000 men worked on the Big Bend tunnel. They worked in smoke and dust, darkness and danger. And leading the way was the king of the steel drivers, John Henry. One day a city slicker showed up at camp. He was selling a new kind of drill powered by steam. The salesman said, "This steam drill can drive steel faster than 10 men put together." The workers looked at the steam drill. They saw a metal monster bristling with tubes and knobs and dials. They saw a future when machines would rob men of the pay and their pride. John Henry stepped forward. "Before I let a machine beat me, I'll die with my hammer in my hand." So the contest was set. Who could drill faster, a machine or the world's best steel driving man? Who do you think could drill faster? Who you think? We're about to read. Let's see. Folks came from miles around to watch the race. The captain blew his whistle. Go! Whoosh, clang, John Henry swung his mighty hammer. Bang, crash, the steam drill roared to life. All morning long, John Henry's hammer rose and fell. His arms ached and his insides felt like they were on fire. At lunchtime, he took a cool drink of water. Then he hammered away faster and faster. All that time, the steel drill pumped up and down. Men shoveled coal into its belly. They poured water into the boiler. Clouds of steam and dust and smoke billowed out from inside the mountain. Finally, the sun went down and the captain blew his whistle. The judges measured the holes. John Henry had drilled 14 feet into the rock. The steam drilled only 9. All the people cheered and shouted. John Henry just laid down his hammers. He sank to the ground and closed his eyes with a smile. He had beat the machine, but his great heart had burst doing it. They buried John Henry beside the Big Bend Tunnel. On a quiet night, you can still hear his hammers ringing. You might even hear a deep voice singing softly in the darkness. Died with a hammer in my hand. Here lies a steel driving man. And that's the end. So what I want you to think about, you're going to see this on the assignment. Think about something that you're really good at or something that you want to be good at. And we're going to try to come up with a story that's a tall tale, a folk tale that we're going to exaggerate. I mean, we're going to go wild and crazy with this thing to try to express just how good you are. Remember, this started when John Henry was a baby. He came out talking. He came out eating real food, a pot of greens, a skillet of cornbread. He came out with the ability to hammer when he was born. So how could you come up with some exaggerations for yourself? I can already see mine brewing in my head. You know, I play tennis, and I think I am the best tennis player ever. So I think that's going to be my topic. Tennis player. And how good of a tennis player I am. So there will be on this assignment just for you to kind of brainstorm. What are you good at? What can you brag on yourself about? Because we each have at least one thing that we are like super fantastic with. Okay, some people have many, many, many. Some people have a few. Some may have one, but we all have something. Think about it, and then we're going to write about it. See you guys later.